Alright, we're starting off with a new decade. It's time to get into all the crazy, wacky, terrible cartoons of the 2020s. I hear people have some reactions to that Thundercats reboot, or maybe I could start cleaning up the latter half of the 2010s. There's a ton of cartoons that I missed that I really want to get to. Bless the Hearts, Neo Yokio, or even those stupid YouTube animated storytime videos.
It was irrational to treat me like this, just because I never heard of a potato before. After that, I left with dignity.
So what is this ultimate show we're starting the decade off with? Just hit me with the biggest thing you got.
She got a superstar cat, who knows where it's at.
Dum-de-dum-dum-dum.
What? Sabrina the Teenage Witch. That had a cartoon. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember now. If you'll excuse me, this decade is going to start with one of those good old-fashioned episodes that I've got a bone to pick with. I guess you can't go wrong with the classics, right? We're gonna take a look at an episode that I absolutely hate and want to tear to shreds. If you don't know, Sabrina the Teenage Witch was a fairly popular show in the late 90s and early 2000s. I remember hearing about it a lot, but I don't remember watching the live-action version very often. Although I do know what it's about. It's right there in the title. Based on the Archie comics of all things, Sabrina was a girl who discovered that she had magical powers on her 16th birthday. It was definitely a show that played to the culture of the time. After Harry Potter came out, kid magicians were all the rage, and basically dominated the popular culture of my childhood. You couldn't walk 2 steps without tripping over a wand or a wizard, and Sabrina was pretty popular, at least until Charmed came out and was liked a whole lot better. Then again, Sabrina had an animated version and Charmed didn't. Alright, so here's an idea on how to ruin everything about a concept like Sabrina the Teenage Witch in a spin-off. First of all, make sure that Sabrina the Teenage Witch is no longer a teenager. In the show, she's now a 12-year-old, because who needs continuity? This is actually kind of important for both this episode, which is about becoming an adult, and the concept of the show as a whole. Believe it or not, I'm not entirely against making Sabrina a younger character. What I am annoyed with is how it affects the concept of the series as a whole. Because she's not 16 years old yet, she can't cast her own spells. This was a brilliant move in the executive room, I'm sure. Now, if Sabrina wants to cast spells, she either needs to be given them, or she needs to take them from her aunts. Why? Because this show is all about morality tales and life lessons. You know, like a kid's show should be about, you know, in the minds of creatively sterile adults. Despite all of this, I remember watching the show quite a bit back in the day, actually. It wasn't something that I outright hated. I can remember that. But this is definitely a strange one, because besides this episode, I remember nothing about the series as a whole. I even had to look up what the names of the characters were besides Sabrina herself. There are a few shows like that in my childhood. One that strikes my memory is Lloyd in Space. I remember watching that one all the time, but I remember nothing about it, except this one episode where there was this alien that got to choose whether it was a boy or a girl, that has a much different context today than it did back when it originally aired. And maybe we'll get to talk about that episode another day. As for this show, I want to say that it's not good. I mean, it's animated fine. The storytelling seems to work as it's supposed to. The characters are more than a bit bland, but they're not unlikable. No, what would make me call this show bad is probably the voice acting alone. Specifically Sabrina's voice actress.
A funny thing about that, look, Harvey, the video arcade.
The voice actress was 12 when the series came out. On some level, that's pretty admirable, actually getting a kid to voice a kid in the series of the same age. On another level though, Sabrina has the voice that most shows would give a character specifically to show that they're a bad actor. Honestly, the voice actress was 12, but she sounds like she's 6. Her voice doesn't really have any emotion. And let me tell you, her lines don't help matters very much.
Go to a dopey kid movie like Wombat Wally? Thanks anyway, Harvey.
I don't want to be harsh, but this honestly reminds me of stuff on Peppa Pig. But no, besides the bad voice acting, I wouldn't call Sabrina the Animated Series an awful show. I mean, I don't think that it's good by any means. It's no Disney classic, that's for sure. But no, if it wasn't for this specific episode, I probably wouldn't be talking about the show ever. In full disclosure, this is going to be one of those proxy moral episodes. Remember my Nobody Doesn't Like TJ review? That episode came from a similar place. It wasn't so much the show overall that I wanted to talk about, but it was the moral that was taught time and time again in the exact same way. That episode, and every single other episode with that moral, tried to teach that you couldn't expect everyone to like you, which is a fair moral, but what virtually every single one of them taught was that it was just okay to dislike people for no reason, and be hostile to them for no reason. The episode we're reviewing today is called Anywhere But Here. It's in a similar position. The only difference is that this episode tackled it in an especially bad way, with very hackneyed writing. If you're wondering, the moral is this: adulthood sucks. You'll have the happiest life possible if you get hit by a bus by the time you turn 18, and die painfully in a hospital bed. No, I'm not exaggerating. Okay, I am exaggerating. That's not the moral that they teach, it's just the corollary prepackaged into the moral that you shouldn't hurry to grow up. It's a moral that I have never liked, even as I got older and became an adult. Especially as I got older and became an adult. I actually think that it's a worse moral to teach now than ever before. And to make matters worse, cartoons are still doing this in the exact same way. So while I am picking on this episode explicitly, my words are going to be mostly applicable to just about any other episode that says better cold than old. This episode starts off with a fairly big problem that doesn't bode well for the rest of the series. So, Sabrina the Animated Series is one of those cartoons that has 22-minute episodes, which was fairly unusual for the time period. Most cartoons, kids' cartoons at least, had 2 11-minute episodes for every half-hour block. Sabrina, though, is still written like it's an 11-minute cartoon, which means that every scene drags on, is filled with filler, and every other scene is redundant. Here's what I mean.
If you kids get lost,
And Zelda, I'm like 2 days away from being 13. Okay, so I'm 11 and a half months and 2 days away.
Get it? She's not a teenager in this series based on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. If you're a spin-off making changes, the last thing that you want to do is really point out those changes, especially if they harm the series as bad as this one does. Just a thought of mine. Then after the scene where Sabrina states that she doesn't want to be treated as a kid, we get a scene where Sabrina states that she doesn't want to be treated like a kid. Alright, maybe I'm old-fashioned. Like, I understand that certain rules of writing go in and out of vogue, but I do believe that each and every scene in the story, especially a short story, should be relevant to the plot and give us new information, or, at least be funny.
I'm practically a teenager and I'm kind of tired of being treated like a little kid.
Yeah, well, I'm 44 and I'm really tired of dressing up like an idiot and making a fool of myself in public, okay? So just take the darn balloon, will you, kid?
Okay, that's a good one. You got the funny on this scene, I will give you that. That joke actually did make me laugh the first time I saw it. Unfortunately, it's like the only joke that really works in this entire episode. It's not that the show doesn't try to tell any jokes, it's just that it doesn't logic very well. So Act 1 of the episode is about how much it sucks to be a kid. Act 2 of the episode is about how much it sucks to be an adult. Act 3 is about the existential crisis that Sabrina has with the prospect that she'll never be happy as long as she lives. But we'll get to that when we get to that. One thing Sabrina does as a kid is try to use an arcade machine. Unfortunately, she can't do this because she's too young, and we see a bunch of elderly people about to use it. Then when Sabrina tries to use it as an adult, she's made fun of because she's too old to be using this. This is the kind of stuff that clearly tells me that this is a first draft effort, because this joke doesn't work on any level. It doesn't make sense. I've already told you the main problem with it. In the very first scene, old people are excited to play the game. In the second scene, Sabrina's made fun of because she's too old to be using the arcade game, and she's nowhere near elderly.
Hey, lady, aren't you too old to be playing this? It's kind of a teen game, for kids.
There is no consistency. Going beyond that, though, arcade systems don't really stop smaller kids from playing with them. I think you might be thinking of amusement parks, not arcades. With their you need to be this tall to ride kind of deal. In the first scene, there's a line of kids excited to ride this arcade game machine, and yet they need an adult to accompany them.
Sorry, kid. A lot of intense thrills here. I thought you were with an adult. You gotta have one with you to play this game.
The guy watching the arcade machine says that he thought Sabrina had an adult with her, but the guy is the only adult in the entire arcade. It's stated that you need an adult to ride with you on this machine to be allowed to go on, but Sabrina later gets on and made fun of it because it's stated to be a teen game. This might sound like nitpicking, and I definitely am harping on this one broken joke a lot, but it just goes to show you how sloppy this entire episode is. And I stand by this. If you really do care about a moral and want to teach it, if you think it's important to instill this wisdom in the kids, you need to try harder than this, because this kind of moral can come across as stupidly condescending towards the kids if you do it wrong. Oh yes, you should appreciate being a kid and not adult, says the adult. Oh yes, you should appreciate being poor and not rich, says the rich guy. I mean, you can make the argument, but you need to do a damn good job. And this episode does not do a good job. And it's like this with all the 5 things that Sabrina can't do because she's a kid.
Bummer. Guess you didn't see the can't buy without parental consent sticker.
then she would have downloaded it off Napster like any other 12-year-old who wanted hardcore music in the year 2000. Oh, I'm sorry, you want to pretend that there's absolutely no advantages to being a kid whatsoever, and so we're just going to ignore how they're usually the first adopters of new technology, like the internet, cell phones, texting, and social media. Also, by the way, a court case has established that refusing to sell things like explicit music and violent video games towards minors is a violation of their free speech rights, which, you know, we tend to forget that they actually do have.
I know what you screamed last summer.
I know what you screamed last summer.
Age?
12, but what does that have to do with...
It's PG-13. You gotta be at least 13 or have an adult with you.
Everything is wrong with this scene. First of all, that's not how PG-13 movies work. That's how R-rated movies work. A person who's like 10 can see a PG-13 movie on their own, and most adults won't care. PG-13 stands for parental guidance highly suggested. Keyword being suggested. And no, this isn't a nitpick. They could have easily done what the Weekenders did and make a fictional rating. More importantly though, Harvey and Sabrina look exactly the same age. It makes no sense why this woman would ask Sabrina her age and not Harvey. Secondly, she's so close to 13 that it doesn't really matter. I get that it's wrong to lie, but Sabrina, just say that you're 13. Is the movie theater really gonna ask for your birth certificates? Everything in the first part of this episode is just so fucking contrived. And yeah, that kinda pisses me off a bit. One of the prerequisites if you're trying to tell the kids how wonderful the childhood is and how much they should appreciate it is to maybe understand how childhood works. Like, in a very real sense. Like, in any way whatsoever. It's just a little thought that I had. Like I said, this episode is particularly bad with its moral. Not that this moral is ever really good. At least when most try to tell the story, they'll pick things that really do suck about childhood. Not being able to drive a car is one thing that's pretty common. And yeah, that's mentioned here, but it's only really mentioned. It's not enough. I mean, not having a disposable income is something that does affect most kids, and it does suck about being a kid. And yet, Sabrina is able to afford music, the arcade, a pizza shop, and the movies all in one run. This is a bad game that you're trying to play, and you don't even know the rules. Then Sabrina has a fantasy about what being an adult is like.
Welcome to the wonderful world of adults, where whatever you want is exactly what you get.
I'll be bringing this up later, but trust me, no kids in the 2020s older than 7 is actually gonna believe this. Unless they're like really fucking sheltered. Speaking of...
I've been looking all over for you. Hilda's waiting for us in the car. It's time to leave.
Leave? But Harvey and I still have about a zillion things we want to do here.
Sorry, Sabrina, but I'm the one who's driving, and now is when I need to leave.
But it sounds like you're the one who's driving, and Zelda decided that it was time to leave. I'm very confused right now. Salem the cat is played by Norbit from the Angry Beavers, by the way. I bring this up because when you hear his voice, you're going to be continually distracted with, where have I heard this voice before? Anyway, Sabrina goes complaining about how much being a kid sucks, and Salem allows her to try to be an adult. He gives her a magic pocket watch that will allow her to be an adult for 24 hours.
You get the deal, right? Stay more than 24 hours, and it's permanent. No refunds, no returns.
Ahem. Are you fucking insane? Okay. This episode wants to go deep into the responsibilities of being an adult and shit. Alright, and in your adult sensibilities, you're just gonna give her this thing that has a chance, an easy chance, might I add, of irrevocably damaging her life. In the next episode, Salem is probably gonna pay for a trip to a tattoo parlor, and some gauges as well. Then maybe in the next episode, he'll buy her first smoke, just so she can learn her lesson. I get it, it's a show about magic, and much of these shows about magical kids and spells rely on the parents being insanely irresponsible. Harry Potter's first year of school literally opened with Dumbledore saying that anyone who just walks in this random hallway you could just apparently accidentally enter would die a most gruesome death, and he just wasn't gonna care. At the same time though, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone wasn't about learning how hard it is to be a responsible adult. The square peg does not go in the round hole. So we've talked about why being a kid doesn't suck, let's talk about why being an adult doesn't suck.
I'm grown up, which means I can do what I want all the time.
Oh, she's just a naive little bugger. Adults can't do that, except they can. Look, maybe I'm just especially fortunate or something, but it is totally possible to have a career that essentially lets you do whatever you want, whenever you want. That's my career. I'm not trying to brag or anything. Self-employment is a thing. And no, technically speaking, I can't literally do anything I want. If I don't work for like a year or even a week, I will probably kill any future prospects of this career. But on a daily basis, yeah, I could just do whatever the hell I want. I could take random days off if I feel like it. Yes, this is just my own personal experience, and my own experience doesn't fit every single other adult life. But this is actually a problem with this plot in particular. Adulthood isn't a one-size-fits-all dress that they pretended to be. No two adulthoods are really the same. For example, Sabrina is married to Harvey and has kids. Not every single adult, even back in the late 90s and early 2000s, went down that road. There's nothing wrong with living the bachelor life or the bachelorette life all your life. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Same with not having kids. Actually, it might be better not having kids if you live in the kind of apartment that Sabrina does. Look, this episode was written by adults, right? Maybe one of them took a debate class at some point in their life and should be able to easily recognize a straw man argument. That's what these episodes just love to do. They tend to create the worst possible adulthood that they can think of and just throw their characters into it, stating that this is what all adulthoods are like. It's like saying that every single big city is Detroit. It's just not true. And then there's stuff like this. Imagine, if you will, that Sabrina was doing this at the beginning of the episode, just causing general mischief. Do you think that Hilda and Zelda would just let her do it? No, they wouldn't. Hilda didn't even let Sabrina stay at the mall for an extra hour or whatever. You have parental authority now, use it! And there's another thing. Sabrina isn't the only adult in the room. I get her being surprised and blindsided, I guess, but then there's Harvey. He just does nothing throughout the entire episode. Honestly, if this really is the kind of person that he's gonna grow up into, it does not do good things for my perception for his character as a whole. Normally in a show like this, you want the boy and girl to get together eventually. You probably won't see it during the show's run, but you definitely want to see it after the show at some point. Kids Next Door is a good example of doing this thing right. But no, Harvey is a miserable piece of shit. I'd say that it reminds me of Oscar from Hey Arnold, but
I don't know what it is with me and jobs. Just can't seem to concentrate. I feel mixed up. Maybe you ought to whip up a little dinner, honey.
He is exactly Oscar from Hey Arnold, a deadbeat that'd be a mistake to marry. It's not that they make him outwardly awful, it's just that they don't give him any positive traits whatsoever. I cannot see why the hell Sabrina married this guy.
Uh-oh. I'm just a kid who looks like a grown-up. I don't know how to cook.
Okay, we start by opening up the package of ramen. And we put it in the bowl, like so. I should probably use a bigger bowl, but whatever. Then, we rip open the packet of flavoring. Just pour it in. Like so. This is difficult to do with a camera, I admit. Do not cook holding a camera. And then we add some water. Be careful not to fill the bowl up too much or it's just gonna spill everywhere. Place the bowl in any conventional microwave like this one. And make sure you set the time for 2 minutes. I know this is a challenging part, but you have to understand, 2 minutes. Once it is done, take a fork and then flip it over. Once again, very carefully, do not touch it or you will be burned. Now make very carefully sure to take the fork out, close the microwave door, and cook it again for about a minute to a minute and a half. Any more than that, then the bowl is going to start burning. Or it's going to be very, very hot to the touch. Thank you. This was Cooking with Mr. Enter. Please do not give me any applause. I learned how to do this when I was 8. Kids can't cook my ass. Have you seen the show on Amazon Prime? It's called Just Add Magic, and in my opinion, it's worth getting an Amazon Prime show. It, like Sabrina, is another show about magical kids. These 3 kids get a magical cookbook that teaches them how to do magic through various recipes. It's all about them cooking. Oh, and coincidentally, it had an episode about a character seeing their adult life, and it actually made a super interesting story about it. So, Sabrina takes her kids out for pizza, and I just realized, if I found out that I suddenly had not just 1 kid, but 3 of them, even now, never mind what I'd feel like if I was 12, I think I'd be having a bit more of a reaction than Sabrina is.
And guess what? Now we're going to the arcade. Hooray! What was I worried about? I've got this adult thing down cold.
Oh yeah, I have 3 kids now. 3 conscious people just splurted into my reality. But the other day, I left the red baseball cap in the washer. Now all my clothes are pink. That kind of stuff just happens, you know? You can't control it. You just deal with it as it comes along. One defense for this plot being so contrived that you could probably argue is that it's just a part of Salem's spell, just giving Sabrina the worst aspects of being an adult, and basically forcing the world to shit on her as much as possible. You know, for the moral.
Tired of being a kid, huh? Doesn't have the brains to know when she has it made. You want to be an adult so bad? Fine.
And if that's the case, it would make the episode even worse. First of all, it would make Salem an outright asshole, especially with the catch that Sabrina could be stuck here. And 2, it really ruins the message. Because you could make anything look like shit if you only show off the negative aspects. You know, like they did with childhood, that thing they're really trying to sell and praise as the most wonderful thing ever and the best part of your life.
Don't you just hate it? When you're a kid, you can eat stuff like pizza as much as you want. Now it just goes straight into your hips.
You know that child obesity was a thing in the 2000s, right? I mean, fat kid was a character type back then. Even ignoring that, one size fits all again. Some adults do have screwed up metabolisms and can't eat garbage. Some adults get lucky. You want an example? I'm about 6 feet tall, exactly. I should weigh somewhere between 140 pounds and 177 pounds. I weigh 160, and I do eat garbage. I don't even want to admit how much pizza that I do eat. It's not that I've never had poor health effects from my life choices, but it's not like you're better off eating arsenic than McDonald's, as some people like to pretend. And if you think that I'm pulling reality ensues a little bit too much, Harvey eats pizza throughout this entire episode and has absolutely no negative health effects, because we just gotta screw on Sabrina as much as possible to tell her that she should be in constant fear of growing up. Look, I'm not trying to argue the opposite of this moral, that childhood sucks and adulthood is all sunshine and rainbows. I will say, I have problems that I could never have imagined that I'd have as a kid, but at the same time, because I am an adult, I have the tools to deal with my problems. A lot of this episode's problems do come from the time that it came out, I will say, even though episodes using this plot today still do the exact same things. You want an example? Minecraft and Super Mario Odyssey are kids' games. That is indisputable. They are popular with kids, and Mario Odyssey was even made specifically with kids in mind. However, adults do play them, and it's generally seen as normal. If you mock an adult for playing Minecraft or whatever, you're seen as the jerk in certain circles. For the love of God, I watch cartoons for a living, and people accept it so much they pay me money to do so. Adulthood really isn't leaving behind childhood things. On the flip side, a lot of problems with this episode are timeless. In virtually every single one of these plots, the main character will get a job. Strangely enough, though, it seems to be the interpretation of what a job is by people who have never had one. So, Sabrina is at a computer and she's answering phones and getting paperwork dumped out on her, doing a bunch of other, job stuff. Please tell me, what is Sabrina's job? What is she actually being paid to do specifically? This is just one of those cliches that really does bother me. It's not like you couldn't find a specific job that Sabrina would find very, very difficult and make her not want to be an adult. Some people might find this more tolerable, I guess, but this is one of those cliches that really does bother me. Opposite Day had this problem too. It's like that Weird Al song mission statement. It's a lot of words and sites that means nothing! Nothing at all!
Sheesh, Spellman, how old are you? 12? You're acting like you've never been a cog in the wheels of a hopelessly bloated corporate structure before.
This was a line written by people who do creative writing for a living, something that many people dream and strive to do. It's a little bit insulting, and it sounds like you're shitting on people who didn't have your good fortune. Or rather, you know nothing about that lifestyle because you've never had that lifestyle before, because it's not common to every single adult life. And of course, all jobs have terrible pay, because why not? It's such a shame that, and this is a little known fact, it's actually illegal to look for a better job with a higher pay that doesn't treat you like dirt. Yeah, as an adult, you're stuck in one job for your entire life, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. When you turn 18, they just hand you a piece of paper saying that you have to work this specific job, by law, or else you go to jail and get put to death. It's not like the average American has 6 jobs throughout the course of their life. Let's just finish this.
Well, I never get tired of looking at this old album. See, it's pictures of the great times we all had growing up. Our junior high class trip, your 16th birthday party, prom night.
Apparently I was wrong. This episode actually does have another good joke, saying that high school was the best part of your life. Actually, no, that's a fucking awful joke. I mean, it would be a good joke if it was funny and, wasn't one of my depressive triggers when I was in high school. Yeah, you're racked with anxiety, depressed to the point where you want to end it, and no one gives a shit about any of your struggles. But you gotta remember, kid, this is the best part of your life. It's all downhill from here. Isn't that a great piece of advice? If you listen to me on nothing else, please, for the love of God, stop saying that high school was the best time of your life, or anyone's life. If it's true, it's tragic as fuck, and I feel unbelievably sorry for you. And all you're saying to anyone else is that their life is all downhill. Is that really what you want to be saying to your kids, or hell, any kids, anyone? Give me one reason why I should continue with this trash.
Is it kind of an old-fashioned, pocket watch thing?
You've seen it?
Yeah, I found it in the trash. I gave it to the kids to play with.
Wait a minute. So, you reached into the garbage, the trash, and you pulled something out of it, and then you gave it to your kids to play with. What the fuck is wrong with you, Harvey? No, you know what? I refuse to take this shit seriously anymore. There's a big fundamental problem with this episode, and it's all an appeal to worse problems. Like when you say that you don't want to eat your vegetables, and your mom is like, they're starving kids in Africa, so eat your vegetables. Okay, that might be true, but it doesn't make the vegetables taste any less gross to you. An argument for why you should eat the vegetables was never actually made. This episode tries to make adulthood look as shitty as possible, after making childhood look as shitty as possible. I mean, maybe childhood looks better by comparison, but the episode goes out of its way to make both phases of life look absolutely horrendous. Appreciate what you got, you little shit. I mean, if the moral was life sucks and then you die, I still wouldn't like it, but at least it would be honest with itself. I've been harsh, but that's because this might be my least favorite moral ever in all of media. At least one that's told repeatedly, one that's told on purpose. More than the typical boys versus girl plot, more than the be yourself even if you're an awful person moral, more than just about anything. As a kid, these messages were fucking everywhere, even in shows that I really did like. They treated childhood as this something special that you can never ever recapture. It was even good shows, it was a major theme in Kids Next Door. And these messages are still in a lot of places. And they ended up giving me a lot of anxiety about growing up. It's something that I was continually afraid of actually doing. Much of what I said is based on my experience alone, but this anxiety is something that's not. I've talked to many young people in my career, and it's very common with the upcoming generation. So many of them are anxious about the world that they're coming into, and pieces of trash like this episode do not help matters. There is a ton of anxieties that young people already have about becoming an adult. The current political climate, global warming, human rights violations, disease pandemics. Enjoy your life while you're young, kids. Yuck, 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 because it's gonna get a lot worse. This is not a message that I find acceptable in any means. And let's lay down the facts. No, there is no guarantee that your life will get worse as you get older, or that you won't have the tools to be able to handle any situation that you come across. You will get new challenges, yes, but they're not insurmountable. Not by any stretch of the imagination. If the future that Sabrina or MLP or whatever is showing you is not something that seems desirable, you don't have to go that direction. You want to know the main thing that separates adulthood from childhood. That's choice. That is something that you will have more and more of as you become an adult. Not all choices are going to be fun or easy, but they're going to be yours. So make the choices that you will be happy with. You end up in a life like Sabrina's if you fall into complacency. People who stick with their current partner or their current crappy apartment or their current shitty job because they're too insecure to think that they deserve something better. This episode disgusts me on a fundamental level. What's really the message here? Like I said at the beginning, enjoy being a kid. Even though it sucks, it's all downhill from here. If you want, I'll even drive the bus for you, so your story can have a happy ending. I didn't expect this review to be so angry or this long, but you don't always get what you expect. And you know what? Sometimes that's a good thing. I expected to get the kind of life that Sabrina had as an adult, or even worse, being a homeless guy without any kind of hopes until I died of hypothermia at 25. Maybe even drowning in debt for a useless degree of a subject that I was no longer interested in, because my passion tends to be a roulette wheel. Let's just say that I got a much happier ending, and you could definitely have a happier ending too.